But are there any questions? I think it would be good to give priority to the people who are participating online. Do we have any questions for the speakers, especially for Andrew Fowler and Elise, who was online?
Yeah, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Just?
Okay, good. All right. Yeah, so I think my name's Ruth Ellis. I'm from the Teachers Union, the SSTU WA here. And my question is for Elise West. I just wondered if the Teachers for Peace have approached the Teachers Union and the Education Department in WA at all.
Hi, Ruth. Thanks for your question. Yes, so Education Department, yes. We've been in communication with them. The SSTU, is that the Independent Education Union?
No, it's the public sector.
Okay.
Flexible Teachers Union, it's called, yeah.
Yes, we would have had some contact with them some time ago, but if you would like to reignite that contact, that would be
yes, I already have because I'm also on state council.
Great.
And our president is reporting back on this issue in November in the next state council. So I'll want to contact you as well. Are there any Teachers for Peace contacts here in WA and in Perth?
Yes, there are. But we actually really encourage people in each state to really self-organise and run with their own strategy. I think WA is unique in the sense that the State Education Department does accept direct funding from the Department of Defence to facilitate contact. So the strategy in your state might be a little bit different from other states, but I'm really happy to talk to you a little bit more. And because I think, states and unions have their own flavours and timetables and so forth. So we've really encouraged people to kind of pick it up and run with it in whatever way it's best with them. But let's be in touch.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ruth and Elise. Do we have any more questions from the online participants? No. Okay. And do we have any questions for Andrew Fowler?
Yes.
Please.
Okay. So can you hear me? Yes. Okay. So my name's John, and my question, Andrew, is. This will make it even better. So my question is this: which political movement is likely to lead to the sort of pressure on the Australian government, both big parties, to change the AUKUS arrangement? Because at this stage it seems as though it's all stitched up. So where do you see the political power and energy to change?
Well, good question. I mean, I think that in politics you should just follow the money, and I think the absolutely excruciating level of funding must be a handbrake on this deal. And we've already given the British 4.9 billion and the same to the Americans to get this thing underway. And according to parliamentary hearing I was listening to, there's no guarantee that if the subs aren't delivered, that we'll actually get the money back. I mean, this is completely unsustainable. No contract. Where's the contract? What are the details? I think that as budget pressures come on, it'll shift from being, a purely like maybe even a question of independence and political freedom to actually whether or not we can afford the damn things. And that there'll be several different pressures on. It won't be just coming from, if you like, from the left. It'll be coming from people who are concerned about the actual funding, whether or not, and how we should defend ourselves, how Australia should defend itself. So it's multifaceted, and I think that I would think that the Teals will take a great interest in this. I think the Greens obviously already have and will go on doing that. And there'll be people in the Labour Party. I know for sure there are people in the Labour Party who are questioning this. In fact, shortly after the deal was signed and after Labour was elected, at least one minister said, "How do we get out of this?" So there's great feeling in the grassroots area, and also at ministerial level still is. I suppose that how do we get out of this? I mean, it's not a deal that really appeals to anybody except the crazy right wing nut jobs that want to get in bed with America and face down China in the South China Sea. It's not in Australia's best interest, and that's not my view. I'm not a nuclear or a strategic or strategist of any description, not a defence reporter, just a journalist. And people I speak to, including people like Hugh White and Sam Rogerveen, I mean, and Gareth Evans, for goodness sake. I mean, these are big, incredible people in the political environment in Australia, and there's a lot of pressure coming in to look closely at this deal and I would say to unpick it for a variety of reasons. So you'll see Labour under pressure from the left and under pressure from the left in its own party. You probably get a coalition government, maybe a true coalition, not the big C coalition, but a coalition of the left, if you like, maybe in government at the next election. That seems to be what's being predicted. I would thought they'd take a closer look at it. Not to mention the Independent Commission Against Corruption.
Thank you, Andrew. Do you have any other questions? Okay, down the back.
Can you hear me?
There's another microphone there.
Or Andrew Fowler. Thank you. David Palmer, Andrew, just a private citizen. I'm currently up to about chapter 4 in the book, so I'm not sure whether I actually read it in your book or I read it somewhere else, but I did read recently where the Virginia-class submarines that we'll be acquiring collectively will have about 500 kilograms of weapons-grade plutonium, highly enriched uranium, and that amount of highly enriched uranium will be sufficient to make 70 nuclear warheads. I also understand just recently that the United States Navy has said it's going to arm its Virginia-class submarines with nuclear weapons. I'm not talking about the Ohio-class, the ballistic missile submarines, or its follow-on Columbia-class. These are the Virginia-class attack submarines. My understanding is the United States Navy is planning to arm those Virginia-class submarines with Tomahawk land-attack cruise missiles armed with nuclear warheads. Now, my understanding is that the nuclear warhead designed for the Tomahawk was the W-80 Mod 1, which is now out of service, but the United States Navy is currently developing the W-80 Mod 4 warhead, which will be specifically for the Tomahawk cruise missile. So, I'm wondering, are we now in a situation like we were in the early 60s, where Australia, in buying the F-111 fighter bomber, which is a nuclear bomber, are in fact equipping the ADF with fitted for but not with nuclear weapons. In other words, we will have the delivery system to deliver nuclear weapons without actually acquiring the nuclear weapons, but they could be delivered overnight if we needed them. Thank you.
I think the short answer is yes. I think that's right. I mean, that's my understanding too. They did sort of go on and off that idea of putting nukes on the end of nuclear weapons, on the end of cruise missiles. But it's been there. It's there certainly in the stage of being an operational capability, as they call it. So yes, certainly any submarine carrying those kind of missiles could be nuclear armed in the future. And you quite rightly point out the F-111, and don't forget, by the way, the F-35, which is the thing that Howard bought, again, like a captain's pick. This is not a kind of captain's pick thing. This Liberal Party seem to have a habit of this sort of thing. Howard went across there and just cut across all the processes, all the open tendering, and just went for the F-35. to replace the F-18, in turn to replace the F-111. But the F-35 also is nuclear capable, and they've been practicing using dummy nuclear weapons on the F-35 in the United States, and they seem to have operated pretty well from what I've read. So if you can operate a nuclear weapon pretty well, but you know what I mean, it's like that's the system works. So yes, the nuclear capability is just about everywhere, and it needs to be a debate, and we need to have that discussion. I think what I find so, you know, I mean, apart from the money, the actual lack of transparency, the lack of taking into account what the Australian people felt, not what the Australian political parties felt, not trying to judge how to get your crazy idea through, but actually embrace the the parliamentary process and have a discussion. Why did the Morrison government not do that? Because they knew that there would be a discussion that would say, we don't want to spend that money and we don't want to do that. But he did it to blindside Labor, and Labor were blindsided, and Labor went along with it. And I think my personal opinion, although I don't give advice to political parties, is that that was a mistake. It was a grave mistake, and it's causing them political grief, and they've got enough of that at the moment.
We're running out of time. Don't want to encroach on your lunchtime too much. We already have 2 more questions, and I think that'll have to be it. If you could keep your question and answers brief, please.
If I may dare to say, this will be quick. Not so much to Andrew, but just to say, how do you get out of AUKUS? Well, it's very simple. We call on the government to use the clause in the AUKUS agreement, which says any party to the AUKUS agreement can exit the agreement by giving 1 year's notice. I think we should, as part of the declaration from this conference, call on the government to use that clause.
I just want to thank Ella and Katrina for your activism. And I want to ask you a question. How do you project with the public? I mean, if I was going to pass by and ask you, what are you doing, and you know, how do you find the public react to you, and how do you react to the public's kind of, you know, you're in my way, you're doing the wrong thing. How do you find that, and how do you deal with it? But well done anyway for all your activism. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for your question. Well, leading up to my lockdown, I've been fighting this Woodside campaign for 5 or 6 years now. So I used to do stalls in town. So we would have petitions and we would have, literature, and I would just, stop and talk to people. But you're right, it's very difficult because Wesley Church gives their private space to have this stall. Like the Perth Rangers won't even allow us to hand leaflets out over the movies on Australia. So Wesley Church, bless them, have given us their little private space in front. But of course, you're right in the middle of fossil fuel territory. You know, you've got Rio Tinto. So all the workers are walking past in their t-shirts and stuff. But the message from a few of them stop and talk, especially with the fracking. So a lot of people who work in the gas industry will say that's the line that they draw, that fracking is just so toxic and so fun that they're against that, even though there's still an industry. So that's a way in, and we'll have conversations. But our argument is always, look, we're not against the workers. Like Woodside workers themselves went on strike last year to try and get better wages. Meg O'Neill's pulling in $12 billion a year or something, and her own workers were striking for better wages. So our argument is always, look, we're not. We know people need to make money. People need to make a living. All we are trying to do is make their bosses make their decisions. So Woodside have all the money in the world, and who was talking earlier, they could be investing in renewable projects. They could use their wealth. So that's what we say to workers. When I was locked on at that boat for 12 hours, it's funny, we felt bad, so we stopped workers coming off a 12-hour shift. That's bad. But all the workers who are about to start will nip it up in the down the garage. Oh, I've got a day off work, you know, thanks for them. So it's it's tricky. But when you try and get them to see the bigger picture, you know, the inconvenience we're causing now. But I think when we have, you know, these intense bushfires and floods and, you know, you're not going to be able to work anyway. There are people currently right now who've lost their jobs, lost their livelihoods, lost their homes because of rising waters and climate change. So yeah, we're trying to appeal to that bigger picture, think of children, think of the future. It's,
also I feel like in terms of the Palestine movement, a lot of the demonstrations we've had in the city have been met with a pretty good response from a lot of people in those streets shopping. Obviously there'll be some people who hate it, but I do think for the most part, like, a lot of people generally can appreciate and understand why we're protesting. I think it also means we have to be clear with our messaging as well, and like, you know, it's about highlighting the Australian government's complicity. This isn't some faraway issue happening in the Middle East and you know, what goes on over there. Actually, that this issue is directly connected to us in Australia, and that as Australian people, we have a responsibility. And also, we don't have to stand up against it, but also we don't have an interest in war and imperialism. No one does. War and imperialism are, you know, in the interest of the rich and powerful, only benefit them. I don't think the rest of us do benefit from any of that stuff. And in terms of the campus stuff and students, there is definitely like an active minority of students, a large minority who really support the Palestine activism. I think a lot of young people, more so than older people in some ways, have become more outraged at what they're seeing because they're seeing it on social media every single day. And there is a broad kind of left-wing anti-capitalist sentiment, I think, by whole layers of young people. So I think a lot of students appreciate what we're doing. And we did have a lot of protests that we kind of disrupted the library, disrupted some buildings, disrupted people studying. And you know, a lot of students, not a lot, some students get angry, but I think a lot of students, like when they hear our speeches, when we talk about how there's no universities left in Gaza, when we talk about the weapons companies' connections of Curtin, they're shocked to hear that our university is so connected to weapons companies. No one actually knows about it. No one, the university kind of keeps it under wrap a little bit. It's not trying to be like, we've got connections to Lockheed Martin, like, you know, people know about it a bit in the engineering department, but I do think, more and more people don't know when they find out they're outraged, and then, so, you know, spending a lot of time leafleting, talking to students, arguing to them, I guess, why they need to come to protest is also important, because when we do have a kind of active minority who do participate in the protests, that can kind of shift the tide on the campus a bit, and like, you know, it kind of establishes that people at this campus are pro-Palestine. Okay, maybe the majority aren't technically pro-Palestine or actively pro-Palestine, but actually like trying to mobilise people who are pro-Palestine actively in an ongoing way, as many people as we can. I think that is important in kind of just shifting the public narrative and public perception amongst broader layers of students, which I think we have been pretty successful in doing. So yeah, I think that's my answer to that question.
Okay, we've run out of time. It's lunchtime, so please join me in thanking all the fantastic